So here's the thing. It's been a while since we've had a nice fireside chat, hasn't it? Well, truth be told, I've been cycling through a few video ideas before deciding, fuck it, let's talk about Sonic again. More specifically, my favorite Sonic spin-offs, the Sonic Riders duology. Seeing how Sonic is a series about getting speed and keeping speed, racing games just come naturally to the franchise. Sonic's had a few, but Sonic Riders is the one that I always go back to. But before I explain why, let's explain how these games even came about. Before Riders, Sonic already had the two Sonic Drift games, the second of which automatically is at least a 7 out of 10 because it has Fang the Sniper in it, and Sonic R, a game I personally gave a shot more times than anyone really should. The franchise had a good chunk of racing games by the early 2000s, but there's one problem. They were all terrible. Again, except for Sonic Drift 2. So, Sonic fans did what they do best, complained.
All you ever do is complain!
Hey Sega, can we get a Sonic racing game that isn't shit? Fine, we'll fucking do it. I bet you think I'm joking, but no, according to Sega, that's exactly what happened. They rallied up Yuji Naka, game director Kenjiro Morimoto, and producer Takashi Yuda, and a few others to get this game going. Keep the name Takashi Yuda in mind. I'll elaborate on it later, but based on my research, I think he's the main factor in what led to Sonic Riders forming its identity. What is that identity, you may ask? Well, Sonic Riders is a racing game, but instead of driving cars or boats or airplanes, you're riding hoverboards called Extreme Gears, and I just remembered this game came out in 2006. To explain the game as simple as possible, you move forward automatically and have to perform tricks in order to get more air, which is basically your gas. How do you perform good tricks? Well, you have to hold down the jump button when approaching a ramp. The longer you hold it down before jumping, the more tricks you can do. But be careful because holding down A also slows you down. There's also a Sonic Hero style class system. This game knows how to worm its way right into my heart. Speed characters can grind on rails by jumping and pressing A, fly characters can launch off ramps and fly through rings, and power characters can break through barriers and go through shortcuts. Every player can also use a boost, which is also an attack, and collect rings to level up, and there's items, and this is starting to get a bit more complicated than you expected, isn't it? Well, that's one of the flaws of Sonic Riders. It has a high skill ceiling, but also a high skill floor, meaning there's a lot to learn and they do not do a great job of teaching you all of it. This is an older type of game where it just kind of throws you right into the fire. There is technically a tutorial video, but it doesn't really help all that much. I can understand how people with no knowledge of what they're getting into may have been pushed off by the first level. Hell, I've beaten these games a few times now, and yet when I went back to get footage, even I lost the first level. The thing is, once you actually get a grip of how to play the game properly, it's a lot of fun. The controls feel just right, responsive enough to where you feel like you're fully in control, but still feeling like you're on a hoverboard, and getting a little too rowdy will cause you to get your shit kicked in. Finding the right timings for jumps is also fun, especially when you can find hidden areas and shortcuts where you need to hold the control stick up or down in order to reach them, and the boost attacks feel fast and satisfying. It's fun to rush into an enemy, hit them in some way, and then leave them in the dust. That being said, it's not perfect. I hate how you have to press the jump button again in midair in order to grind, otherwise you won't actually connect with the grind rail, even if you end up touching it directly. I know it's common in games like Tony Hawk, which this game is clearly taking some pointers from, to have you hit another button in order to grind, but in a racing game it just feels annoying at first. Like, just let me jump on it, man. And also there are these random moments where you have to like spin the control stick around. I'm not the biggest fan of that. And like I said, you have to learn most of this yourself. The tutorial only teaches you like the very basics. I think that's enough time on gameplay. Let's move on to the story. Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles are just kinda chilling out in Metal City one evening, just having a guy's night out, I guess, when suddenly a Chaos Emerald is stolen from Random Ass Incorporated by the Babylon Rogues, Jet the Hawk, Storm the Albatross, and Wave the Swallow. This game's their introduction to the series. They're a trio of treasure hunters directly descendant from the ancient Babylonians, who we will learn about a lot more in the second game. I always like these guys. I think that they're great foils to Sonic and Friends. One's a loudmouth leader, one's an annoying know-it-all, and one's a dim-witted muscle. But not extremely so. They're just like Sonic and Friends turned up by 2 notches, just enough to make them the bad guys. It's great. Anyways, Sonic's like, hey, I'm the only one allowed to steal those. Then, this happens, and then this happens, and this happens? And Sonic says, no, new competition! Suddenly Eggman pops up out of fucking nowhere and announces he's going to be holding a race.
Not just a race, but a special race to see who's the fastest!
I miss when big games could just have lines like that. Yeah, that's basically the plot now. Eggman setting up this special race to see who's the fastest, and the winner gets all the Chaos Emeralds. I like how Sonic wants to join the race, not to stop Eggman or anything like that, but just because this random guy he, just met bruised his ego, and now he has to put him in check. Also, Amy is here now.
Ugh.
And yeah, that's basically the plot. Sonic, Tails, Amy, Jet, Stream, Sam, and Knuckles are all competing in the Grand Prix. The Babylon Rogues want to use the Chaos Emerald and this box thing to raise Babylon from underground and find this ancient treasure upon it, which ends up being a magic flying carpet protected by a genie. Outside of that, the game has a mission mode. That's always fun to see in a racing game. Okay, so remember how I said it seems like Takashi Yuda is responsible for a lot of Sonic Riders' identity? Well, let's talk about that before moving on to the sequel. Based on what I saw, it seems as though Yuda is responsible for at least the main concepts that make Sonic Riders Sonic Riders. The tricks, hoverboards, all that stuff. First of all, I was not interested in making a conventional racing game. I wanted to make something different and dynamic, to have tricks and stuff. To do that, you can't really be in a car, so inevitably we came up with other ideas. We thought things like surfing and snowboarding have more flexibility to allow you to do tricks. Takashi Yuda. Another reason why I think Yuda is so important to the first Sonic Riders games is because he's not a significant part of the sequel, and that game, well, following the commercial success and critical, it was alright I guess, of the first game, Sega plopped out a sequel 2 years later, Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. On the surface, it may look like more of the same, but that is a surface of lies. Sonic Riders Zero Gravity is Sonic Riders for bitches. Sonic Riders for those who were intimidated by the previous game. Yes, Zero Gravity very much simplifies the gameplay. You still lose air and replenish it with tricks, but instead of having to time your jump and then perform tricks manually with the control stick, you just play a game of chicken where you have to hit A as close to the edge as you can get. They also got rid of the parts where you spin the control stick, and most confusingly, they got rid of the boost attack, which I don't even know why they did that. But without it and the more interesting trick system, it seriously hampers how much control it feels like you have over the race. Well, at the very least, we do get some new mechanics in their place, a different upgrade mechanic, and the titular Zero Gravity moves. Let's go with the one I don't like first. Remember when I said, rather offhandedly, that the first Riders game also had an upgrade mechanic? Well, that's because it didn't really matter all that much. If you collect enough rings, your air gauge will grow a bit. That's it. If you're good enough with your tricks, you don't even really need the upgrade. Here, well, your first upgrade is a permanent speed boost, the second is the ability for you to access your class-specific shortcuts, and the third thing is a slight air gauge extension. Yeah, on your second upgrade, depending on your class, your extreme gear will transform. The Powers get a bike, the Flyers get whatever the fuck this is, and the Speeders get a hoverboard. Oh wow, interesting. This upgrade allows them to use their shortcuts. I don't like that. Because it's your second upgrade, depending on what race you're doing, you most likely aren't going to be able to use the shortcuts until your second, or in some cases, third lap. You know, it's funny. One of the big complaints I tend to hear about Sonic Riders is that it feels like there isn't enough to impact what makes you win or lose the race. That feels random. I don't necessarily agree with that, but it's just strange that, despite it being so prevalent, when it came time to make changes for Zero Gravity, Sega decided to remove or restrict some of the gameplay elements that impacted how you do in a race. Very strange. I mean, one of the only things left is items, and it's not like they do much in these games. It's pretty random, and most of the time you either just get some air or rings. Oh god, Blaze got into the catnip again. They even got rid of the mission mode. What the hell, guys? That was fine. One of the few things I really do like about Zero Gravity, that isn't just that it's another Sonic Riders game, is the Zero Gravity elements. There's two moves you can pull off, the first of which replaces the drift. Instead of just turning tightly, when you see a tight turn, you can slow yourself down, aim, and blast off at high speeds for a second or two. It feels really fun to pull off, especially when you go right off the track while doing it. And the shorter your drift is, the more speed you get. But it still feels like it's a bit too easy. The second is a boost, where you fly up into the air and all this shit starts going onto the track and you grind off of them to get speed. It's fun, but extremely situational. There are specific points in the map where you are intended to do it, and doing it elsewhere will just result in more problems than it's worth. How are our heroes able to do this? Well, let's get into the story. One night, a strange ring-like thing falls out of the sky and lands in Metal City, right in front of a bunch of robots owned by the tech company Mediotech. That same night, one falls in front of Tails' house as well as at the Babylon Rogues' feet, who are just doing what they normally do and trying to find some treasure. This causes the Mediotech robots to go apeshit, so much so that Gun is called in. I like that, of all fucking games, Sonic Riders Zero Gravity gets a reference to Gun.
The International Security Organization, GUN, has begun to investigate the event.
Anyways, the robots start attacking the Rogues and Team Sonic, and somehow Amy ends up getting mixed up in all this as usual. They decide to head over to the president of Mediotech and ask him, hey, what the hell's going on here? But plot twist, turns out that Mediotech is run by Eggman. I love that. People always wonder where Eggman gets his money and supplies to do all, this, and it turns out he's the secret CEO of a huge tech company. Lovely, he's basically Jeff Bezos but with a cool mustache. Essentially, it's revealed that the robots are hooked up to a computer owned by Mediotech, which also has one of these rings, called the Arcs of the Cosmos, and they basically have this property in them where they all pull themselves together via controlling robots. Eggman wants to get them all together so that he can use them to access secret technologies on the floating gardens of Babylon from the first game. Why would these space rings access secret technology on an ancient floating island? Well, that's because, get this, the Babylonians are aliens!
The Divine Wings, Straddler of Stars. Could they be power units used to operate some starship?
So this Divine Wings thing is...
Right. Babylon Guardian.
Oh shit, we're getting ancient aliens up in here. Babylon? That's their spaceship, which is why it's just able to fly like that. What are the Arcs of the Cosmos? How did Babylon end up here? Well, the Arcs are part of their engine and were able to create micro black holes, which is why our characters use them to mess with time and gravity or whatever. But obviously having 7 small black holes together started causing problems, so the Babylonians were like, fuck it, ejected the Arcs into space and decided just to live on Earth. This leads to the logical conclusion that, in the Sonic universe, anthropomorphic birds are descendants from aliens.
So are you okay with all this?
Well, much as I'll miss the vastness of space, this world still has its charm.
Bean is now confirmed an alien. Think about it. Anyways, the whole experiment goes wrong. The 5 Arcs are recombined on Babylon, and oh, look at that, a black hole. Who would have guessed? One last race to save the world later, and boom, that's the plot to Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. A lot wackier than the first game, and in that case, more my style. So, in that regard, I'd say Zero Gravity is a step up, but in almost every other way, I'd say it's a step down from the original Sonic Riders. The gameplay is shallower, and while it's still fun, I'd still prefer Riders 1. Still, both of the games were pretty good. If you want my recommendation, check out Zero Gravity first. There are ways. And if you like it, go back to the original. But, don't be afraid to look things up if you're confused. Once you actually learn how to play it, I'm sure you'll find there's something fun here. But you want to know the real reason why I look back on Riders so fondly? Not nostalgia, they were before my time in that regard. No, it's the aesthetic. Oh my god, I love the visual and audio aesthetic of these games. The look of this world is fucking great. Every level is so aesthetically pleasing in both games. Even like the dirty factory levels look good to me. They just fit in so well with Sonic. When I think of a city for Sonic and his friends to live in, like where they call home, I don't think of Station Square or Central City, I think of Metal City or Megalo Station. When I think of Mobius, or I guess what the modern games call Sonic's World, this is the kind of shit I picture. A mix of natural and futuristic with a dash of industrial for wherever Eggman is. It's perfect. The music in these games are also fantastic. Both games have a killer soundtrack that's been playing in the background of this whole video. I even like the slight design changes all the characters got in this series. It's very minor and keeps most of the key design points for the characters, but also gives them a distinctive look, especially in the 2D animated intro to the first game. This series exudes early to mid-2000s energy in a way I can't really explain. I don't know why, but these 2 games just remind me of like Code Lyoko or that one Yu-Gi-Oh show where they play the game on fucking motorcycles. I had to watch this show against my will because I was on vacation with friends for a week, and this is all that they let me put on the TV. Obviously, there's the extreme sports element that was popular at the time, but really everything, from the music to the visuals to the story, it just comes together to give us a slightly different and interesting view of the Sonic universe that I just really want to see again at some point soon. Hell, it's so different that Sonic fans have debated for a while if these games should even be considered canon. I'll admit, even I had flimsy reasoning for including it in my timeline video, which you can check out if you want. But thanks to Sonic Frontiers, the king of making things canon, the Sonic Riders games are canon to the mainline series.
Kinda reminds me of where we found Babylon Garden. Yeah, I wonder what Jet's up to.
Say what you will about Frontiers, it made these games definitively canon, and dang it, that makes me happy. So, what happened to the Riders series after Zero Gravity? Nothing. Yep. After this game got even more, I guess it was alright, reviews, Sega decided not to go forward on making a third game in the series. I know, it's sad to hear, but hey, at least we got 2 good games out of it. And you know, it could be worse. Sega could have made a cheap, barely finished game on untested hardware for the Xbox 360, and then, when their bad game performs poorly, go on to say that this means that no one likes Riders anymore, so they can the series, and decide to go on to make a trilogy of uninspired, boring Mario Kart ripoffs that people for some reason claim are better than they actually are. And then, in the third one of those, remove the one thing that made any of these games even slightly interesting, and specifically have it revolve around racing teams of 3, yet not include the trio of characters most associated with racing in the franchise. At least that didn't happen. I'm Surf Strongman, and that was the thing.